All right, everyone, welcome back. This is another Golden Feet podcast, Facebook Live, an episode of the Golden Feet podcast, season 3, episode 34. Talking some baseball again, this time with Bill Pearch, who joined us back in April to talk about the Sabr Society for American Baseball Research Landmarks Committee and Sabr Landmarks in the Pacific Northwest. Today, Bill is here to talk about the kickoff, which happens on Wednesday, August 7th, of Sabr 52, which is the Society for American Baseball Research's annual conference, this time happening at the Hyatt Regency in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Bill, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on again. It was a pleasure speaking last time about Sabr.
Yeah, that was one of our best podcast downloads, I think around 25 to 30 downloads of the podcast. So that was pretty awesome. So that's why I had you back on again. Hopefully we can have some of the same kind of download magic, but also this is a pretty big discussion, or this is a pretty big event, because this is what Sabr is all about, really, right? When you get the chance to go to the annual conference.
I agree. This is Sabr. Sabr has a number of events throughout the year on a very local chapter level, various committees, smaller research discussions. But the Sabr convention is the big celebration. And we have mentioned in the past about how Sabr is really the comprehensive baseball experience. And attending the Sabr convention is absolutely true. However you enjoy baseball, something is a part of the convention that you'll be attracted to in a heartbeat.
Okay. So let's get right into it, because there's a lot of stuff. And I just shared this Sabr schedule, Sabr 52 link, sabr.org/convention/Sabr 52-schedule. So let's get started. I mean, I've never been to a conference. You've been to many. So how does it start? Because it looks like there's a board meeting August 7th.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
When does
so this will be my third in person. The first one that I attended live was Sabr 50, which you can actually see this little pass from the first one in Baltimore in 2022. So that was my first experience. And then the local Chicago chapter, we were honored that Sabr 51 was in Chicago last year. So this will be my third. Yeah, so basically the festivities start off right away on Wednesday, run all the way through Sunday. It starts off with a board meeting. There are a number of committees that hold their specific meetings, different chapter topics, as well as presentations on specific research projects. They might be very local stories. They might be a topic that somebody is specialized in. So it's sprinkled throughout. There's a lunch, there's a ball game. We're looking forward to actually 2 ball games this year, going to a minor league game on Thursday night to see the St. Paul Saints, where I've never been to that ballpark. Obviously, I've heard about the team forever. And then Friday night, we get to see the Minnesota Twins host the Cleveland Guardians. And nothing quite like getting together with some of your biggest friends in baseball at a game talking sports.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. One of the things that really jumped out at me, and obviously there's a Minnesota flavor to this, was the Hall of Fame speaker lineup. Rod Carew, Tony Olivia, Bert Blyleven, and Jim Cott. And I didn't even have to research, because I was like, those guys were all Minnesota Twins at one point in their career.
Exactly. Yeah. So that makes this particular convention a little bit unique. We've never had a panel like that before. Just the volume of local legends, frankly, that are going to be there and accessible for part of a discussion, open up for Q&A, and so.
Well, I'm sure people are going to have lots of Rod Carew memorabilia, cards, or what have you. I mean, Rod is before my era. I recognize Bert Blyleven's name. Probably pitched in the late 80s when I started watching baseball. I definitely remember Jim Cott, and I remember Jim Cott would not be playing baseball, but probably commentating. And for who, I'm trying to remember who he would have commentated for.
Sure. Yeah, but that's what's incredible.
Not food, like baseball, or for Jim Cott, I know I've seen on TV commentating for baseball games. I don't know if he's still doing it, but I know I've seen Jim Cott as a color analyst before.
Exactly. Yeah, I saw him a couple of years ago in the postseason. I believe it might have been with TBS. So
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So let's just keep going here. So we've talked about the feature panel with Hall of Famers, and I don't know Tony Oliva at all, so maybe you can elaborate a bit on Tony if you know him.
Oh, sure.
The other three I know, and then obviously the remaining guest speakers, who are, and looking back at it, Twins baseball president Derek Falvey, general manager Thad Levine, pitchers LaTroy Hawkins and Glenn Perkins. So we've covered that piece. We talked about the welcome reception. Tell me a little bit more about what a Sabr conference is like if you're there day to day, because there must be a lot of stuff going on. They may not have dug into every piece of this when they sent this email out, but when you look at the agendas, there's some cool stuff in here. Like you mentioned the St. Paul Saints. Maybe you can tell me about that.
Sure. Well, just in general, I mean, what you're talking about, if you look at the convention schedule, the hardest part for me is really planning out how I want to spend my weekend or my week, leading up to it. You have so many different topics spread throughout the day, and you need to make choices. I want to hear this particular topic. I know just a couple in particular that are jumping out at me. I plan to attend the Landmarks committee meeting. We're going to hear about some local Minneapolis, St. Paul landmarks that are historic in nature and might even be able to find some time to get away and sneak around out to go see. And definitely with the baseball card committee, I want to see that. I know I'm really close with the co-chair on that. I think they're going to have some interesting topics that they're going to be talking about, but as well as the opportunity to actually get to the game. That's what's unique is, obviously they've had major league games as part of the convention throughout, but just the added flavor of having the Twins and the Saints in town at the same time, I think that's actually a nice little bonus. And I have to say that both games are sold out right now in terms of the tickets with busing from the hotel over to the game, but you can still buy a minor league ticket on your own and catch up with everybody.
Yeah, I'm just looking at my phone here too because I'm scanning through a book that I probably told you about that I found at my local library that I then bought, which would add a lot of flavor to the conference. It's by Moon, and it's called Moon Baseball Road Tips by Timothy Malcolm. And the way he's done it is break down as much as he can in a city, from flights, hotels, landmarks, food, beer, drinks, ballpark experience, everything. So I immediately was looking at this book while prepping for our talk today too, because I got curious, read the book, and then now I'm like, okay, anytime I go to a baseball city, I'm going to take this book, and see what he has to offer, because there's probably a lot of stuff that Sabr doesn't have listed that you could probably get out of this book that would enhance your conference experience, right?
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. I would say, anytime you're traveling, take that book. Definitely look into the Sabr landmarks map as well. And it's nice because with the landmarks map, like we talked about before, it'll give you direction, turn by turn directions to visit everything and compare it to obviously a local book. So definitely two great resources to use.
Yeah. So let's just keep going through some of this stuff. There's just some really cool stuff in here. Opening on August 7th, Wednesday. Closing ceremony on Saturday, August 10th. And you said planning your schedule because there's social gatherings, coffee talks, Twins pregame happy hour. Tell me a little bit about what happens there. Is that sort of what you were mentioning earlier in terms of that's why you have to plan your day out and do your research?
Yeah, I do. Because the first one I attended was in Baltimore, and the topics or the presentations are again spread throughout the day in various locations throughout the hotel. And I remember from my first one back in 2022, I had a good idea of where I wanted to be when. And then it just became a challenge because sometimes I would attend a session and it might run over with good questions. You don't want to leave that, but you had to head out, and definitely you needed to find time to give yourself a little break and just socialize with some of the your friends that you might have only been interacting with in terms of baseball discussion online, and actually sit down, talk to them, have a really good discussion about what are you working on, what are some of your projects. So yeah, so that's honestly, planning the schedule is probably the trickiest component of it for me, because you want to, I, being completely selfish, I want to hit all of it. But there are recordings of all of these sessions, so you can definitely go back and listen to something if you missed out on it before. But that's honestly my biggest recommendation for anybody who might be attending for their first time or haven't yet and really want to go. Look at it. Again, think about how you're connected to baseball. What is your particular passion? If you look through each individual presentation, discussion, the poster presentations that are part of this, you're going to find a unique connection for yourself. Visit the exhibitors room, see who some of the local authors are who have new books out. Visit with them. There might be signing opportunities, for former players or executives that are roaming through. So it's one of those cases of map out your day, but be prepared to tweak it a little bit, because I haven't quite finalized my schedule yet for this year, but one of the sessions in particular, I'll give him a little plug. I'm interested in seeing the topic on Mike Donlin. He's a character for a baseball player from back in the early 1900s who's popped up in some of my local research, and I don't necessarily want to give that away at this point in time, but it's just a matter of making the week goes fast. Those couple of days go fast, so it's really kind of picking and choosing it and planning as much as you can to soak it all in.
Okay, so there's lots of stuff to review while we keep going. Obviously, cost is one thing. $295 regular rate USD, I'm assuming. $125 single day, $365 regular rate for non-members, $155 single day. Mm-hmm. And so one of my questions I sent to you was the cost of a Sabr membership right now works out to be about what?
60? Yeah, it's affordable for in terms of what you get. Just the amount of research that you have available to you, and again, with becoming a Sabr member, it's you can look at some of the different options for multi-year as well. But the value that you get out of this experience, the access that you have to your peers, to the presenters who are Sabr members, who are executives for teams, who are local writers, it pays for itself. It's absolutely worth the expense.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the stuff here as we go through the schedule. I'll share some more of it. There's quite a bit of stuff. Like, it's almost to the point where, yeah, you're right. You couldn't do everything, right? Even if you went to some of the events or, went to some of the other stuff. I was scanning down here, looking at some stuff that's really interesting. Everything from a committee meeting on the Negro Leagues one day to what's another one that caught my attention? Of course, this is going to come up everywhere. AI and machine learning in one of them. Mm-hmm. Brian Hall co-chair, Allison Levine co-chair. And the Twins Guardians game is on the Friday night at 7:05. You don't have to walk far from staying at a Hyatt Regency hotel. You can tell us a little bit about the rate. There's just so much stuff here. I see your Mike Donlin presentation here. Look at some other interesting ones. The Giants, the A's, and the Silicon Valley. That would be interesting. Why Jim Cott would have been the 1966 AL Cy Young winner had it existed. I don't know if Jim is actually speaking at that presentation. There's so much stuff here. Just keep going down the list.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you just scroll through it, there's absolutely one of the other topics I'm particularly interested in too is one of the significant controversies, I guess, or topics for debate was really the pitch clock and some of the new rules that have gone in. And one of the sessions deals with the fact that the games in the last year are actually shorter. is it working the way that it was intended? So what are some of the issues related to that? So it's because that's the one obstacle I think that a lot of people have related to Sabr is sometimes sometimes its biggest asset, and it works against it a little bit too, is that everybody instantly thinks that it's analytics, that's all
Right.
Sabr does, and that's part of it, and that's definitely weaved into this particular schedule. But it's talking about history. It's talking about the local flavor of whatever location you're in, and obviously this year Minneapolis, St. Paul,
Yeah.
but as well as talking about topics that are so relevant to today. Again, talking about AI. There's a session even on wives and girlfriends. And other things. Scoring the millionth run. And again, looking back at like Negro Leagues topics or baseball cards and landmarks. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just looking at this Moon Baseball Road Trips book too, because talking, of course, about I've never actually been to Minneapolis and St. Paul, commonly known as the Twin Cities. Separates the Minnesota and Mississippi rivers. I don't know anything about that part of the United States. All my baseball experiences have all been on the West Coast. So anywhere up and down the West Coast, right? So
I'm personally looking back to get to Minneapolis because I've only been there a few times. I had a chance as a kid back in 1989. My family was there for a wedding, and I happened to get a tour of the Metrodome at that point in time. And I remember I got to jump off the glad bag in the outfield, and my wife and I traveled. We were at one of the final games at the Metrodome. And then the following season in 2010, we were at one of the first games at Target Field. So it's sadly been quite some time since I've been to that ballpark, but it was beautiful. Really looking forward to get back and see any changes that have occurred, just experience the ballpark in a different way with all the changes that might come on. So.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting because there's just so much detail. And, like I sent you a bunch of notes. We covered off the main stuff. Is there anything else you want to go over before we wrap up that you think is going to be useful to people when they come to the conference?
Yeah, I would just say go in with an extremely open mind, and if you've been hesitant to become a member, I'm convinced that this convention will push you over the edge. Again, I've been saying this for multiple reasons, but however you are personally connected with the game. Right. You will find that you will connect with those particular people that share that particular passion at the convention.
Interesting.
While you attend these presentations, these different panel discussions, going through the games, one of the joys simply is just walking through the hallway and connecting with people that have shared topics, and some of the side discussions that you go over while you're there is just remarkable and inspiring. And some of my favorite moments from last year when it was in Chicago was just meeting people and spending 10-15 minutes talking to them, getting to know them, but going with an open mind. However, again, whatever your baseball interest is, you will find it. Just weed through the schedule, make it happen, take advantage of it, and understand that everybody who attends this convention is completely accessible. Walk up to them, ask questions, get engaged, and it's a significant. It's a game changer in terms of baseball experience.
All right, thanks, Bill. We're going to wrap it up there. We'll talk to everyone soon. A couple things before we wrap it up. Check out our podcast, facebook.com/Golden View Podcast, on our website, goldenviewpodcast.ca. And also, we have a Buzzsprout page where we host this podcast, buzzsprout.com/1869778/episode.